Halloween's coming up, guys, and if you want something a little bit spooky but utterly delicious, well, you're in the right place. This is my devil's food cake. It's such a rich and decadent cake, but it's super simple to make. The decoration anyone can do, and it'll be the showstopper to any Halloween party you attend. If you want to know how to make this spooky looking cake, you're in the right place. Let's get into making this devil's food cake. Oh my God, it's so soft. So here are all the ingredients to make this devil's food cake. Now, I know it looks like there's a lot here, but that is why, as a chef, I always recommend that you do, as what the French call, mise en place. I weighed all of this out. This is everything I need. So I've got for the frosting in the middle, for the sauce to go over the top, and for the cake batter itself. Get it all ready to go and life will be simple, easy, dreamy. If you're looking for the measurements for this cake, they're all on my website. It's in the description box down below. I can't go through them right now because, as I said, there's loads and I can't remember the grammage. So that is why it's all weighed out already. So the first thing we need to do is get the oven turned on to 170 degrees and we're gonna make the batter. First thing we need to do is line our cake tins. As you can see here, two different ones. I don't have the absolute perfect cake tin, which, you know, it doesn't really matter, just so long as you've got two things that are roughly the same size. Yes, maybe one is going to be a little bit bigger, but we can just trim off an edge. You know, we're going to get a chef's nibble and it's going to be the same size as the other one. Of course, ideally, two cake tins, but sometimes just work with what you've got. It's not the end of the world. And hey, if you really wanted to, you could even make this as a square sheet. It would still work absolutely fantastically and you haven't got to struggle trying to find two round tins. But obviously, round, nicer for at the end when we decorate. To line these two tins, I'm going to fold my baking paper in half, fold it into lots of triangles, measure it to the middle of the tin and cut a circular shape at the top of the baking paper, and as you can see, it fits right in. I'm also going to grease it with a little bit of spray oil, but if you don't have this, just use the inside of your butter packet, or even just stick a little bit of kitchen paper into a touch of oil and wipe it round. This devil's food cake is absolutely delicious, but as a cake, very easy to make. So all we need to do is sift all of the dry ingredients into the bowl, and I would say that that's especially important with cocoa because see all these little lumps here? It just means that if you sift it, you can just push all the lumps through like that with the back of a spoon and there's no lumps in your batter. So we're going to add in the flour. I could probably do with a bigger sieve, but again, it's what I've got, so it's what we're working with. And then just the salt, the bicarb and baking soda. And again, I like to give it a little sieve because you often end up with these little lumps, which just means you can push them all through. And then finally to that, we're gonna add in the sugar. And that's all the dry ingredients. And then just spoon it all together. We're gonna stir it all up so it's all evenly dispersed and all the same color. And now, can you see why it's so important to have your mise en place done? Because it just makes it so fast to make. This I'm doing in real time and I can just add it all together and it's done. So then I'm just gonna add together all my liquids. So I've got my milk, my coffee, the melted butter, the oil. We'll crack the 2 eggs in there too. Give that a good whisk with a fork so we break up all them eggs. And finally, I've got my water here, which I need to just bring up to the boil so that we can add into here. And that is what really gets the cocoa working and really makes that dark rich color. So I'm going to pop that onto the stove and we're going to mix all of this together. Once your water's come up to the boil, we're first going to add in all the other liquids, mix that all together, give it a good stir, and then slowly pour in your hot water, combining it all together. The batter will look a little bit thin, but that doesn't matter. And then we'll divide it between our 2 tins and into the oven it goes for about 30 minutes. And a really useful kitchen tool, if you have one, is a spatula, or a Maurice, as they're called in French. But it means you can scrape out all the last bit of the mixture from the bowl. Oh my God, this is gonna be great. I'm excited for a bit of chocolate cake because chocolate is up there with one of my favorite things. So we'll get these into the oven, 30, 35 minutes, have a little tidy up, and we're gonna make the other stuff so it's ready to go while these come out and they cool. So let's get them in and get them baking. Okay, cakes, they're baking in the oven. Now we're gonna make the kind of glazy sauce that's gonna go over it. And the reason why we're gonna make this next is because you need to let it completely cool. You don't want it to be warm, so this is great. You can make it ahead of time while that's still baking to make sure that it is cool. And the good thing is, if it gets too cold and isn't runny anymore, we can just reheat it for just a moment or two in the microwave, and then it will be pourable again. But better to have it colder than having to wait to glaze your cake because it's not cool. So I like to make this one next while the cakes are baking. Are you guys with me? As you can see, this recipe, not complicated at all, but the end result, absolutely fantastic. And it's really simple to make and just as an absolute showstopper for Halloween. But if you don't like sweet food, then maybe give this little video a watch. It's all about using up your pumpkin. And if you're new around here, you might not know that I hate waste. And this is a great way to use up your pumpkin that maybe sat on your doorstep for a night and now you don't know what to do with it. So give that one a watch and make a delicious soup. But let's get back to this. And to make this glaze, it's kind of mirror glaze, S-vibe. It's not quite, of course, but it's a really simple way to make it. So we're gonna do a bain-marie method, which is a pot. I've got some water in here and we're gonna sit the pan on top of the pot. You wanna make sure that the water isn't touching the bottom of the pan. And then we add our sugar, our chocolate, our cream, and our butter. And that is it. Now we take it to the stove, let it all melt together, and once it's all melted, we're going to tip it back into this pot and it's done. And we can pop it to one side. So let's get this on, I'll show you what it looks like, and then we can move on to the frosting in the middle. So the cake should be coming out and cooling, we can have the frosting ready and get this thing all together. So let's do this. As you saw there was just a few little lumps of butter left right at the end, but what I've done is I've just pulled it off the stove. You know, there's enough heat in here which is going to melt that last little bit of butter, because you don't want it to start to stick or, you know, kind of cook. So it's always good if there's a few little lumps of butter left, just take it off right at the end and just give it the last little stir in. I also have got 12 minutes left on my cakes, and if your oven is anything like mine, I like to give them a little turn. So I've just turned them round so that they can bake nice and evenly, because even though this is a pretty new oven, the back corner loves to bake things really fast. So it's always good to keep an eye on your oven and what it does. And now I'm just going to tip it into the container where I'm going to let it cool, and we can use it when we need it. Give the spatula a little lick. Oh, this is really going to be great. And now that can just sit there and wait, and we'll make the frosting for the middle. Now the last job we need to do is make the butter frosting for in the middle so that it's ready to go when our cakes are cool. 30 minutes has gone by, I've checked the cakes and they're still a little bit wet, so I've put them on for another 10. This is why it's so important that you check before you take out, and you just don't take for granted the recipe, because maybe your tin is even smaller than mine, or maybe it's slightly larger. There's always going to be slight variations on cooking time. Of course, they are a guideline that is roughly correct, and what you should always do is maybe check it 5 minutes before the recommended time, but as we saw there, mine are just going to need a tiny bit longer. So that's great, because this isn't ready yet. Now, I had the butter sitting on the windowsill in the sunshine because we want to make it nice and soft. So once it's nice and soft, we're going to pop it into a bowl and we're just going to beat it so that there's no lumps. And while we do that, we're just going to melt the chocolate in the microwave 10 seconds at a time, just to make sure that we don't burn it. Our chocolate has melted. As you can see, there's just 1 or 2 little lumps in there, but the residual heat from the other chocolate will more than likely melt it. And if it doesn't, we can pop it back in for another 10 seconds. And now you can see here the butter has gone pretty pale. Of course, you can use an electric whisk, but sometimes it's nice to have the workout. And then we're gonna add in the powdered sugar to this, and then we're gonna add this cream to this to loosen it all up. And if it seizes up a little, that's okay, just pop it back in the microwave and just warm it ever so slightly more. And there you go, just like that. We've got a nice loose chocolate sauce. Now we're just going to gently fold in that icing sugar and beat it all again till it's soft. It takes a minute or two to get that icing sugar worked in, especially if you're doing it by hand. If you were doing this in a machine, it would all happen a lot quicker. But I always like to show you that it can be done by hand, because not everyone has a KitchenAid or, you know, an electric set of whisks. This is why you want your butter soft, because you need to make sure that you can beat it once all that sugar has made its way in. And that sugar will inherently make it a little bit softer, because that's what sugar does, makes things a little softer. It's like if you're making ice cream and you add too much sugar, it will scoop really well but won't sit for very long. So now that's done, we're gonna add in the cocoa. We'll add that in now. And that's it. Once you add in the other stuff, it becomes a lot easier to work, and all of a sudden we have an amazing chocolate buttercream all ready for the middle. This really is a chocolate lover's dream. We just got to wait for the cakes to cool and we can put it all together. So I'll see you in a little min when everything's cold. Everything is ready to go. Cakes are cooled. This is that glaze, and you know, it's really important. I actually almost still feel like there is a tiny little bit of warmth left in it, which is why it's so important that you make it early, because you really need it to start to almost set and be much thicker than when you originally made it. Frosting, still soft, wonderful, perfect. And then the only other one thing we need to do is melt our white chocolate, which we're gonna make our fancy little spider web pattern with. But what we're going to do first is assemble it all and get it ready. Now, as you may see here, this cake, he split. As I took it out of the tin, I wasn't paying attention, it fell out of my hand, and we broke it a bit. So that is why this one looks an absolute mess, but he'll go on the bottom and we'll stick it together with some frosting. And no one will ever know. You know, I wouldn't go serving it to Paul Hollywood because he'll be like, "Ooh, it's broken." But it's all gonna taste the same. It's gonna be utterly delicious, and this stuff will stick it all together. So let's get that together, and then we'll get everything set up so that we can pour the glaze over and have this ready to go so that we can get it in there pretty quickly. As I said from the beginning, not a complicated cake to make, but the visual of it will be stunning. All the way to the edges. See, you would never know that it was broken underneath. So now we'll sit the other one on top, be gentle, just perfection. And you know what's a really great tip is when you take your cake out of the oven, you've let it cool in the tin for a little bit, you've turned it out. I often, if I want a bit of a flatter cake, I put the side that's slightly domed onto the cooling rack. That way, it ever so slightly flattens that dome and you end up with a slightly flatter cake. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna sit this over here, because when we glaze it, there might be a little bit of runoff. So it just gives it a little place to go. Now let's get our white chocolate melted and into the piping bag. White chocolate, melted, soft. And if the worst comes to the worst and you have a white chocolate that has seized, if you add in just a touch of milk or even cream, mix it together and then just warm it back up slightly, hopefully it will become loose. I may even have to re-warm this slightly before I use it to pipe because I'm worried about it, but that's okay. Now, this chocolate sauce has become much thicker. You want to make sure you give it a stir. It's completely cold to the touch now. Give it a good stir, make sure that there's no bits, and then we pour and hope it goes okay. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so fingers crossed we are all good. Start in the middle, let it fall. This is why we sit it on the plate too. Oh my God, I nearly dropped the whole lot on top. Keep pouring. And hopefully it'll run down the edges and create a perfect glaze on top. Now, it's not my favorite because you do have a little bit of waste, but you can't always win them all. But there should just be enough weight in that chocolate sauce to run down the edges. Give it a little tap. The top will become smooth and delightful. Now we're going to do the piping of the white chocolate and make the spider web. This couldn't have turned out better. I'm pumped. And there we have it, a spider web on top of our devil's food cake. A great way to do this is if you've got a pizza paddle, we're going to take it off of here and we're going to slide it onto there. We made it. So let's get into it. Let's take a slice. And what's really good about the pattern on the top is that it's almost portioning, ready to go, so you know how many slices you're gonna get out of your cake. And if I'm ever cutting anything like this, I always like to clean my knife between each cut, and out it comes. Perfect chocolate devil's food cake for Halloween. What more could you want? And that's it, my devil's food cake. Utterly delicious. Oh my God, incredibly soft. And, oh my God, the texture of that cake is so light. It is honestly incredible. Oh my God. Even if Halloween isn't coming up and you're watching this video, I'm telling you now, this cake is the best chocolate cake you'll ever make. Oh my God, it's so soft. And that's it for this week. Oh my God, honestly, that is just next level. Make it, bake it, and share it with your pals. Hey, if you've enjoyed this video, give me a like, give me a subscribe. Maybe head on over to my website, see what's going on over there. There's always extra little bits and bobs that you don't always see here on YouTube. And let me know if you make this cake for your Halloween party. Honestly, it is a showstopper. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you next week. Ciao for now.